Peter Mitchell stared at the alien ships through his viewport and smiled. He had been exploring the outer regions of known space for 3 months now, and this was exactly the kind of excitement he'd been looking for. 6 massive warships surrounded his small exploration vessel, their dark hulls gleaming against the backdrop of distant stars. His ship's eye assistant, Betty, spoke up in her calm voice. "Peter, I'm detecting weapon systems powering up on all vessels. They appear to be Zarkak's design." "Well, isn't that interesting?" Peter said, taking a sip from his coffee mug. He'd heard stories about the Zarkaks, a warrior race that thought they owned this sector of space. They weren't known for their sense of humor. The main screen lit up with an incoming transmission. A tall, gray-skinned alien appeared, his face covered in ceremonial war markings. 4 yellow eyes narrowed as they focused on Peter. "Unknown vessel, you have entered the sovereign territory of the Zarkak's Empire. I am High Commander Vexthar. Identify yourself immediately or face destruction." Peter raised his coffee mug in a friendly salute. "Hey there. Peter Mitchell, human explorer. Beautiful ships you've got there. Love the whole dark and scary vibe you're going for." The alien commander's upper left eye twitched. In all his years of service, no one had ever responded to his threats with compliments about ship design. "Human." Vexthar spat the word like it tasted bad. "Our intelligence reports suggest your species is primitive. You should not be this far into space." He turned to one of his officers off-screen. "How did they achieve deep space travel so quickly?" Peter leaned back in his chair, propping his feet up on the console. "Oh, you know how it is. One day you're inventing the wheel, next day you're splitting atoms, and before you know it, you're having coffee in deep space with new friends." "We are not friends," Vexthar growled. "Your vessel is now property of the Empire. Shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded." "About that," Peter said, checking his own readings. "Betty, what do you think about our new friends?" The AI displayed detailed scans of the Zarkak ships. Their weapons are charged to full capacity, but their shield configurations are predictable. Standard Imperial formations. Nothing we haven't seen before. "You dare to scan our vessels?" Vexthar's face darkened with rage. "This is a direct act of aggression." Peter couldn't help but chuckle. "Coming from the guys who just surrounded my ship with an entire battle group. That's pretty funny." He finished his coffee and set the mug down. "Look, how about we start over? I'm really not looking for trouble. Just doing some exploring, mapping new routes, that kind of thing." The Zarkak's commander's crew exchanged worried glances. The humans' casual attitude was unsettling. Their psychological warfare protocols hadn't prepared them for someone who seemed to be enjoying himself. "Your insolence will not be tolerated," Vexthar declared. "You will learn respect for the Empire through force." He made a slashing gesture with one hand. "Target their engines. Let's see how the human laughs with no means of escape." Peter watched as weapon systems locked onto his ship. His smile never wavered. If anything, it grew wider. "Betty, remember that modification we made at the last outpost? The experimental shield harmonics?" "Yes. Would you like me to activate them?" "Not yet. Let's see what they've got first." Peter opened a drawer and pulled out a fresh pack of coffee. This might take a while, and he wanted to be properly caffeinated for what was coming. "Final warning, human," Vexthar announced. "Surrender or be destroyed." Peter started brewing a fresh pot of coffee, the aroma filling his small bridge. "You know what's really funny about humans, Commander?" He watched the coffee drip into the pot. "We've spent our entire history surviving things that should have killed us. Makes us kind of hard to intimidate." The first shots from the Zarkak ships lit up space around Peter's vessel. He just kept watching his coffee brew, humming an old Earth tune. This was going to be an interesting day. The first volley of plasma torpedoes streaked through space toward Peter's ship. He watched them approach while stirring sugar into his fresh cup of coffee. The Zarkak's weapons were impressive. Bright purple streams of energy that lit up the darkness like deadly fireworks. "Betty, how long until impact?" Peter asked, taking a careful sip of his hot drink. 3 seconds until impact, Peter. Shall I begin evasive maneuvers? Nah. Let's take this hit. I want to see what they're working with. He braced himself, still holding his coffee steady. The torpedoes struck his ship's outer hull. The vessel shuddered, but Peter's coffee barely rippled. On the main screen, Commander Vexthar's expression shifted from triumph to confusion as his sensor readings came in. Impossible, the alien commander muttered. Direct hits, but minimal damage. He turned to his weapons officer. Increase power to all forward batteries. Peter set his coffee down and stretched. You know, where I come from, it's considered rude to shoot at someone before proper introductions. Betty, show them what a human hello looks like. Activating countermeasures, Peter. Though I should note that your definition of hello varies significantly from standard diplomatic protocols. Peter's ship suddenly released a burst of multicolored flares. They weren't weapons, just simple illumination devices. But the pattern they created in space looked like a giant smiling face. Several Zarkak's crew members gasped at the display. What is this mockery? Vexthar demanded, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in anger. Just trying to lighten the mood, Peter replied. You all seem really stressed out. Have you considered meditation? I learned some great techniques from these monks on Alpha Centauri. The Zarkak ships began to move into a tighter attack formation. Their next wave of weapons fire was coordinated, hitting Peter's ship from multiple angles. Warning lights flashed across his console, but none of them indicated serious damage. Betty, how are our shields holding up? Peter asked, starting on his second cup of coffee. Shields at 92% capacity. The Zarkaks appear to be using standard Imperial military protocols. Their attack pattern is predictable based on known combat doctrines. Peter nodded. Send them our scan data. Maybe if they see they're not hurting us, we can skip to the friendly part of this meeting. The data streamed to the Zarkak's fleet. Vexthar's bridge fell silent as they analyzed the information. Their most powerful weapons were barely scratching the surface of the human vessel's defenses. This cannot be, Vexthar said. Our intelligence reports clearly stated that humans were a level 3 civilization at best. Your defensive capabilities exceed our highest military standards. Peter shrugged. Maybe your intelligence needs updating. We humans tend to advance pretty quickly, especially when we're having fun. Fun. Vexthar's voice rose in pitch. You consider combat fun. Not combat specifically, Peter replied, but problem solving. Meeting new people, learning about different cultures. That's always fun, even if those people are shooting at me. The Zarkak's commander slammed his fist on his command console. All ships, switch to Formation Delta. Prepare the quantum torpedoes. Peter's smile grew wider. Now we're talking. Betty, think it's time we showed them our special modifications. That would be logical, Peter. Though I suspect it will only confuse them further. That's half the fun. Peter finished his coffee and stood up, walking to the center of his bridge. Commander Vexthar, before you launch those fancy torpedoes, you might want to scan my ship one more time. Pay special attention to the hull composition. As the Zarkaks ran their scans, Peter began humming an old Earth song about making friends in low places. The data from their new scans started coming in, and for the first time in his military career, Commander Vexthar felt a chill run down his spine. The human ship's hull wasn't just surviving their attacks, it was adapting to them. With each hit, the mysterious alloy was becoming stronger, learning from the energy patterns of their weapons. And through it all, that infuriating human just kept smiling. The quantum torpedoes hit Peter's ship with enough force to vaporize a small moon. Emergency lights flashed across his bridge as several systems went offline. A small fire started in one corner, and the air filled with smoke. Now that's what I call a light show, Peter said, grabbing a fire extinguisher. Betty, damage report. Hull breach in sections 4 through 7. Life support at 60% capacity. Engine power fluctuating. Betty paused. Peter, you appear to be enjoying this more than usual. He sprayed the fire until it died down, then checked his console. It's not every day we get to test our upgrades against real Zarkax weapons. How's our special hull plating doing? The adaptive matrix is functioning as designed. Each hit is providing valuable data. Betty's voice carried a hint of amusement. Though I suggest we don't celebrate too openly. The Zarkax commander appears to be having some sort of stress reaction. On the main screen, Vexthar was indeed looking stressed. All four of his eyes were twitching as he watched Peter casually repair his ship while humming an old Earth song about fixing things. Your ship should be space dust. Vexthar shouted. What kind of demon technology is this? Peter walked to a wall panel that was sparking and began reconnecting wires. Demon technology. Nah, this is just good old human ingenuity. You'd be amazed what we can build in our garages back home. Another barrage of weapons fire rocked the ship. A piece of ceiling fell next to Peter, but he just stepped aside and kept working. Betty, play them some music while I fix this. Something upbeat. Suddenly, ancient Earth rock music began broadcasting on all frequencies. The Zarkax crews heard guitars and drums for the first time in their lives, along with lyrics about never giving up and never surrendering. What is this psychological warfare? Vexthar demanded. Stop this noise at once. Peter sealed the last hull breach with a special patch, then checked his readings. Actually, this is just my repair playlist. Helps me focus. Betty, how are those system repairs coming along? Life support restored to 80%. Engine power stabilizing. Hull integrity improving as the adaptive matrices absorb and analyze the weapon signatures. Betty displayed new data on his screen. Peter, they're preparing another volley, but their weapon energy signatures show signs of instability. I believe they're pushing their systems beyond safe limits. Peter nodded, wiping some grease from his hands. They really don't like that we're not following their script, do they? He opened a channel to Vexthar's ship. Hey, Commander, you might want to ease up on those power levels. Those energy readings don't look healthy. You dare to give me combat advice? Vexthar's gray skin had turned almost white with rage. Fire everything. Full power to all weapons. The space around Peter's ship lit up like a supernova as every Zarkax vessel fired at once. Warning sirens blared throughout his ship, and more systems sparked and failed. But Peter just kept moving from station to station, fixing what he could, while Betty rerouted power and adjusted shields. Betty, let's show them something really interesting, Peter said, finishing another repair. Display our hull's absorption rate on all frequencies. Data streamed to the Zarkax ships, showing how each hit was making Peter's ship stronger. The alien crews watched in horror as their most powerful weapons were being analyzed, adapted to, and ultimately rendered less effective with each shot. This defies all known physics, one of Vexthar's science officers exclaimed. Peter chuckled as he sealed another breach. Known physics. Wait until you see what we do with unknown physics. Betty, I think it's about time we show them why humans love a good comeback story. Indeed, Peter. Their next volley will be ineffective based on our current adaptation rate. Shall we proceed with the demonstration? Oh yes, Peter said, finally sitting back in his chair. Let's show them what happens when you corner a human and expect them to give up. Peter cracked his knuckles and grinned at his main view screen. The Zarkax ships floated there, their weapons hot, but now hesitating. His ship had taken their best shots and was still intact. Now it was his turn. Betty, power up the special modifications. All of them, Peter said, typing commands into his console. Time to show them what humans can do with salvage tech. Activating hybrid systems, Betty replied. Should I explain to the Zarkax what they're about to witness? Nah, let's make it a surprise. They seem to like surprises. Peter opened a channel to Vexthar's ship. Hey, Commander, remember when I said humans are good at problem solving? Well, we're also really good at taking things apart and putting them back together in interesting ways. Vexthar's face appeared on the screen, looking worried for the first time. What are you talking about, human? Peter's ship began to change. Panels shifted and moved as hidden systems came online. The simple explorer vessel transformed before their eyes, revealing weapons and technology from a dozen different alien races, all modified and improved by human engineering. See, while we were out exploring, we found lots of abandoned ships and stations, Peter explained, watching the shock on Vexthar's face. Some were ancient. Some were new. All of them taught us something interesting. Impossible, Vexthar whispered. Those are Kraxan defense arrays and Veltorian pulse cannons. Even, is that a Nexus core? Good eye, Peter said cheerfully. Though they work a bit differently now. We made some improvements. Humans love tinkering with things. He checked his readings. Betty, how's that power curve looking? All hybrid systems operating at optimal levels. The Zarkax weapons actually helped charge our energy banks. We are currently at 130% standard capacity. The Zarkax crews watched in horror as Peter's ship bristled with weapons they recognized, but had never seen work together. Each system had been modified, improved, and integrated into something entirely new. Fall back. Vexthar ordered his fleet. Defensive formations. Oh, now you want to be defensive. Peter shook his head. A bit late for that. Betty, let's show them our first trick. The one we learned from that old Kraxan battlecruiser. A pulse of energy shot from Peter's ship, but instead of causing damage, it created a field that locked the Zarkax ships in place. Their engines strained against the hold but couldn't break free. What is this? Vexthar demanded. Release us at once. That's just a holding field, Peter explained. Though we modified it a bit, the original version was pretty easy to break. This one, not so much. He stood up and walked to his ship's front viewport. Now, about those quantum torpedoes you fired at me. Peter's ship hummed as its hybrid systems charged up. Lights flickered across its hull in patterns the Zarkax had never seen before. Each piece of salvage technology worked in perfect harmony with the others, creating something entirely new. Target locked, Betty announced. Though I should note that firing on disabled vessels violates several space warfare conventions. Peter laughed. Who said anything about firing? Betty, activate the energy drain sequence. Let's show them something really interesting. Beams of soft blue light reached out from Peter's ship, connecting to each Zarkax vessel. Their power levels began to drop as the hybrid systems did their work. What are you doing to our ships? Vexthar asked, his voice shaking. Just borrowing some power, Peter replied. Don't worry, I'll give it back. Though it might come back a little differently than it left. He turned to his AI companion. Betty, ready for the big final. All systems prepared, Peter. Though I calculate a 98% chance this display will cause significant psychological distress to our audience. Peter sat back down and put his feet up on his console. Well, they did want to see what humans are capable of. Let's not disappoint them. The Zarkax fleet hung motionless in space as Peter's ship continued drawing power from their vessels. Panic spread through their crews as they watched their energy readings drop lower and lower. But what frightened them most was the sound coming through their communication systems. Peter was whistling. Betty, let's share some Earth culture with our friends, Peter said, scrolling through his entertainment database. What do you think? Classic comedies. Are you sure that's wise, Peter? Their psychological profiles suggest they take themselves very seriously. Exactly why they need this. Peter selected several files and began broadcasting them to the Zarkax ships. Let's start with some Charlie Chaplin. Suddenly, every screen on every Zarkax vessel filled with images of humans doing silly things. Silent films showed people falling down, throwing pies, and making funny faces. The alien crews stared in confusion and growing horror. What is this madness? Vexthar demanded, watching a black and white film of a little man with a funny walk and a small mustache. Are these some kind of human battle recordings? Peter laughed so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. Battle recordings? No, no. This is entertainment. Humans love to laugh at ourselves. Makes life more fun that way. Reports started coming in from the other ships. Several crew members had abandoned their posts, unable to comprehend why the human was showing them these strange images while holding their mighty warships helpless. "Sir," one of Vexthar's officers called out, "the dreadnought Star Crusher is requesting permission to retreat. Their crew is. They're saying the humans' laughter is affecting their combat readiness." Peter switched the broadcast to classic sitcoms. Now the Zarkax watched humans getting into ridiculous situations and solving problems in unexpected ways. Their rigid military minds struggled to understand a species that would record and share their moments of weakness and foolishness. "Betty, how's that power transfer coming along?" Peter asked, watching another Zarkax ship's lights flicker. "Energy absorption at 85% completion. The modified Nexus core is processing it efficiently." Betty paused. 3 more Zarkax vessels are showing signs of crew panic. They appear to find your psychological warfare particularly effective. "This isn't warfare," Peter said, switching the broadcast to comedy stand-up shows. "This is cultural exchange." The sound of human laughter echoed through every ship in the Zarkax fleet. Some crew members covered their ears, while others couldn't look away from the screens. Their entire understanding of humanity was being turned upside down. "You're destroying our military discipline," Vexthar shouted, watching his mighty fleet fall into chaos. "Stop this at once." "Actually, I'm teaching you something important about humans," Peter replied, feet still propped on his console. "We've survived countless disasters, wars, and challenges. Know how? By learning to laugh at them. By finding humor in even the darkest moments." Another Zarkax ship reported crew members requesting immediate transfer to other sectors. The sight of their mighty weapons being drained while human entertainment played on their screens was too much for their rigid military training. "The great Zarkax Empire," Vexthar said quietly, "brought low by comedy." Peter shook his head. "Not brought low, Commander. Being shown a different way of looking at the universe." He checked his readings. "Betty, power transfer complete. Want to show them what we can do with all that borrowed energy." "Ready when you are, Peter. Though I calculate the demonstration may cause several more crew members to request retirement from military service." "Perfect," Peter said, sitting up straight for the first time since the battle began. "Commander Vexthar, remember how I said humans are good at improving things? Well, you're about to see what your own weapons look like after a human's had a chance to get creative with them." Vexthar stood on his command bridge, watching his mighty fleet fall into chaos. Half of his ships were requesting permission to retreat, their crews shaken by the humans' display of power and strange cultural attack. But the commander had one last card to play. "All remaining ships," he ordered, his voice sharp with desperate anger, "divert all power to weapons, even life support. We end this now." Peter watched the power readings spike on the Zarkax ships. "Wow, they're really going all in," he said, finishing another cup of coffee. "Betty, think it's time we showed them why that's a bad idea." "Indeed. Their power levels are now beyond safe limits. I estimate their weapons will burn out after this attack, possibly damaging their ships in the process." The remaining Zarkax ships glowed with energy, their weapons charging beyond their design limits. Vexthar's face appeared on Peter's screen, all 4 eyes blazing with determination. "You have mocked us, human," he snarled. "You have displayed impossible technology. You have shown our crews images that break their warrior spirit. But now you will learn the true power of a desperate Zarkax attack." Peter leaned forward, his smile fading for the first time. "Commander, your ships can't handle that much power. Stand down before you hurt your own people." "Fire!" Vexthar screamed. "Fire everything." The space between the ships lit up brighter than a sun as every remaining Zarkax vessel fired their overcharged weapons. The energy beams converged on Peter's small ship, enough power to destroy a small planet concentrated in one devastating attack. But Peter didn't try to dodge. Instead, he pressed a series of buttons on his console, activating systems that had been charging throughout the battle. Betty, activate the absorption matrix at full power. Show them what we've really been doing this whole time. The energy beams struck Peter's ship and vanished. No explosion. No damage. The beams simply disappeared into the hull, which now glowed with strange patterns of light. What? What are you? Vexthar whispered, watching his fleet's most powerful attack disappear into nothing. Just a human who's really good at learning, Peter replied. See, every shot you fired taught us more about your weapons. Every blast helped us adapt. And now, he gestured at his glowing ship. Now we understand your technology better than you do. Warning alarms blared across the Zarkax fleet as their weapons began to burn out. Several ships lost power completely, their overtaxed systems failing under the strain. Betty, send them the technical data, Peter said. Show them exactly what's been happening since their first shot. Detailed scans and analysis streamed to the Zarkax ships. They showed how Peter's hybrid technology had been learning, adapting, and improving with every attack. Each blast had made his defenses stronger, his understanding deeper. This is impossible, one of Vexthar's science officers said, studying the data. Their ship, it's been using our own attacks to upgrade itself. The human wasn't just surviving our assault, he was learning from it. Peter nodded. That's what humans do best. We learn. We adapt. We take what life throws at us and turn it into something new. He looked directly at Vexthar. And we try really hard not to hold grudges. So what do you say we end this fight and talk about a better way forward? Vexthar stared at his fleet's readings. Half his ships were powerless, the other half damaged by their own desperate attack. And through it all, that single human ship hung in space, undamaged and now glowing with absorbed energy. The stories were true, Vexthar said quietly. The reports we ignored about human adaptability, about their impossible survival skills. He looked up at his crew, then back at Peter. Perhaps it is time to talk. 2 hours later, Peter sat in his ship's small dining area across from Commander Vexthar, both of them holding cups of coffee. The Zarkax commander sniffed the dark liquid suspiciously before taking a small sip. This is not unpleasant, Vexthar admitted, his 4 eyes blinking in surprise. Though I don't understand why you consumed so much during combat. Peter laughed, pouring more coffee for both of them. Sometimes the best way to handle stress is to act like you're not stressed at all. Plus, I really do just enjoy coffee. He gestured at the various repair crews working together. Through the viewport, they could see human and Zarkax engineers helping each other fix the damage from the battle. Your approach to warfare is unlike anything in our military records, Vexthar said, watching his crews work alongside the human. You turned our own power against us, showed us strange entertainment, and then offered to help repair our ships. That's because I wasn't interested in warfare, Peter replied, pulling out a bag of cookies to share. I was interested in meeting someone new. The fighting part was your idea, remember? Betty's voice came through the speakers. Peter, the repair teams report that 3 more Zarkax ships have restored power. The crews are expressing significant interest in human engineering techniques. See, Peter grinned, offering a cookie to the commander. This is much better than shooting at each other. Your engineers are brilliant, by the way. They picked up our hybrid tech concepts incredibly fast. Vexthar took the cookie carefully. We have always prided ourselves on military might. But your adaptability, it changes everything we thought we knew about combat and species development. That's because you're thinking about it wrong, Peter said, dunking his cookie in his coffee. Humans didn't develop all this tech for fighting. We developed it because we're curious, Because we love figuring out how things work and making them work better. Outside, one of the Zarkak ships tested its newly repaired systems, its lights coming back on with a bright flash. Cheers could be heard from both human and alien repair crews. And the laughter. Vexthar asked, trying the cookie dunking technique himself. The constant humor, even in the face of destruction. That's our secret weapon against the universe itself, Peter explained. Life is hard. Space is dangerous. If you can't laugh at the challenges, they'll crush you. But if you can find humor even in the darkest moments, you can survive anything. Vetty interrupted again. Peter, I'm receiving requests from 17 Zarkax crew members for copies of your Earth entertainment files. They seem particularly interested in something called comedy classics. Both Peter and Vexthar laughed at this, though the commander quickly tried to hide his amusement. My crews will need significant retraining after this encounter, he said, but without his earlier anger. Or maybe they'll just need a different kind of training, Peter suggested. There's a lot humans could learn from the Zarkax too. Your engineering is amazing, even if you focus too much on weapons. Maybe we could set up some kind of exchange program. Vexthar considered this while finishing his coffee. The Empire has never considered peaceful cultural exchange before. But then, we've never encountered a species quite like humans. He paused. You really want to share knowledge with us? After we attacked you? Of course, Peter said cheerfully. Best way to make sure you don't attack the next human ship you meet is to help you understand us better. Plus, I bet if we combine your military precision with human creativity, we could make some amazing things together. The commander looked out at their crews working together, sharing jokes and technical knowledge. Perhaps this is the beginning of something new for the Empire. That's the spirit. Peter stood up to get more coffee. Now wait until I show you what humans call dad jokes. They're so bad, they're good. Betty, pull up my special collection. Warning, Betty announced to both of them. Dad joke protocols engage. Prepare for terrible puns. And so, in the middle of space, surrounded by the aftermath of battle, human laughter once again echoed through the ships. But this time, it was joined by the unusual sound of a Zarkax commander learning to laugh as well.